given at City Hall in Keene back in February 19th, 1917. And now, how old was Barry Faulkner in 1917?
I don't know.
I guess, well, there you go. I'll use Wikipedia. I'll find out how old he was then. But as we mentioned earlier, he really, I think his idea of the city as being a piece of art, I think it's just really a neat way to think about it. And some of the things that he says here is that I always think of Keene with pride. It appeals to me in the way a fine work of art appeals. Just what art is has never been satisfactorily decided, but we recognize the greatest when it has a spontaneous popular expression. Now, a people has no spontaneous expression as significant as a city of their own creation. And so what he's really saying is that the people, you're going to make your own art. You're responsible for making your own art. And again, this was in 1917, and he's talking about at the time that it's really a turning point in Keene history to ensure that Keene maintains, to be a nice place to live. And he talks about preserving the buildings in 1917 and not tearing them down and making them into ugly buildings, I guess, at the turn of the century. And in fact, he mentions a theater that had been built downtown, and I think he's talking about the Majestic Theater.
Yeah, probably. That was on Roxbury Street.
And that was on Roxbury Street. And I've seen pictures of it, and it was kind of an ugly. It was kind of an odd facade and things like that. But he really, he hits the nail on the head. And this is, again, back in 1917. Here's another quote. He says, "Because we are a young country, we have been slow in recognizing the fact that art is not a luxury, but a necessity to the life of a people. We are wrong if we think that art is remote, that it is something in a foreign gallery. Art is here. There is genuine art in the disposition of our public square." And again,
that's true.
He talks about how the founding fathers of Keene really were pretty smart in the way they laid the city out.
Yeah, they did. And when they first came up and they laid that out with Main Street being 16 rods, the biggest, widest Main Street in the world, known for a long time. And the other thing that happens is, even as local residents, we drive up Main Street heading north, and you see the steeple of the church, and you see the trees and the common and the gazebo and the flowers and everything that's done. And it really is a piece of art. It's wonderful that what we've done to preserve this. And about 20 years ago, when a group got together to really put back the city to make it so it started to look good, and did the work on Main Street and did the work on the common and all the different places, that was a wonderful group that really worked hard to do that. And I can just read that in Faulkner's little piece that he has here in regard to the city of Keene.
Well, and he's really right on too. He's talking about how the population of Keene doubles itself every 40 years. Now, that was the case
at one time,
a couple, 2, 3, 40 years ago, but obviously that's not the case right now. But in 1917, he's envisioning the city 40 years from in 1957 and having a population of about 24,000 people.
Yeah.
Well, it was pretty close.
Pretty close. And what's an interesting thing, although the people that settled here and want to live here and be part of this whole community, a lot of them live just outside. Like they may live in Surrey or in Marlborough or whatever it is. But we got to remember that now, although we still only have about 24,000 local residences, we have 8,000 college students, and every day about 40,000 people commute into the city of Keene. Right. So we have almost doubled that and tripled that again. It's not so far. It's just that the automobile has changed the way that we do it, and now they still come into Keene to work, shop, and do whatever it is that they're going to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were talking about the Keene Development Commission earlier, and again, one of the quotes here in the article, he says, among the problems that one idea would be to get a commission to consider the question of dividing the city into zones within which type of building could be limited. For instance, the factory could not be built in a residential quarter.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of in a sense, talking about the zoning, and especially down in the Marlborough Street area. And, again, he's talking about, at this point, the railroad was very big in the city in 1917. Vehicles, were just starting to come up and be used a little more, but the the railroad was used to transport people and freight immensely still in 1917. B&M owned all the rail lines in Keene at that time. And so what ended up happening is that, of course, all the factories got plopped up right next to the rail line, almost no matter where they were. And he's talking about it here, about ensuring that if we're going to put factories, build new factories, that they all more or less go in the south side of town next to the railroad tracks. And really, I think what he's talking about is Railroad Square in here, and also maybe Kingsbury-ish area and, Lower Marlborough Street area in that regards. But, as an example, years and years ago, I don't know if people know this, one of the things I'm sure that would infuriate Barry Faulkner was the tannery, the Cheshire Tannery, that was off the backside, right as Park Ave and West Street kind of fork off. Behind there, maybe about 50, 75 yards, in a big swath right there, in a couple, 3 acres, there was a giant tannery right there. And it was, right next to the railroad tracks. That's pretty much where the North Bridge is right now. But it was things like that I'm sure just, because there was a lot of houses around that area. Park Street and everything was starting to get more and more houses in that area. He talks about the development of Wheelock Park in 1917, how in 1917 he feels it was, a treasure of the city and needed to be preserved and respected and made so that all kinds of people could enjoy it. I don't know if you thought about a dog park back then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know, I was just going to say, we're still talking about it today because there's a proposal for the dog park out there.
Yeah.
That's right.
And again, stuff like he talks about, trying to save the trees in town. And this was really great. He says, the trees are the most important factor in the beauty of Keene, and we must take adequate means to care for them and maintain them. And he says, we need a good tree doctor to look after the tree diseases and plant new trees in time to replace the old ones. And unfortunately, we know what happened between Dutch elm disease and the hurricane in 1938. That took care of pretty much all the beautiful elms in downtown Keene. All right, we've got a phone call here this morning on Sound Off. Thanks for calling so much. Go right ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, this is Garrett, one of Robin Hood of Keene's merry people.
Hey, how are you this morning?
Good morning.
I'm doing great. So I was glad to hear that you guys have been talking about the Robin Hood case, as it's been in the news and the city is appealing it. And one thing that was brought up is the amount of stress that the parking enforcers are placed under, allegedly by myself and my friends, which I don't believe to be the case. I believe the amount of stress that's being brought on the parking enforcers is in part due to the city filing a lawsuit and making them such public figures because of the case and all the attention that's been brought to it. And that's something that the city is, responsible for and will continue to be responsible for as they continue to appeal and fight this.
Yeah. It's interesting, to see how it all plays out. And thank you very much for your call. Thanks for calling in this morning. And we'll see what happens. I mean, it should be intriguing. I mean, this whole decision came down and everyone kind of reacted to it. But now there's another whole chapter in this. So now we kind of sit and wait and see what happens again, I guess. So, but anyway, to get back to the Barry Faulkner article here, in finally wrapping this whole thing up, he says, now is the critical time, and it rests with us in Keene to preserve the rare flavor of its appearance, or become as ugly as Lowell or Fitchburg. And one of the reasons I had mentioned that earlier was because I had read this article.
I hope there's nobody up here from Lowell or Fitchburg stopping today listening to you.
Sorry about that, Fitchburg.
Right.
But this, again, is in 1917. And,
wonderful.
And recognized it. And so it really was a great read. And again, I'll see what I can do about getting it on our Facebook page, or maybe I can find it online somewhere. Maybe there's it's somewhere online, and I can get a link to it, and we can put it on the Facebook. Where did you get this?
I'm trying to remember where I got that from. I'm not sure. Someplace from City Hall. I think it was in my counselor's box. I'm not sure. You know what? You might call Patty Little.
Yeah.
And ask Patty. She can probably tell you, because I think that's where it came from. Maybe I can't know. Either that or somebody just printed some up and put them in a counselor's box. I don't know. But they
so all the counselors got them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's